What if I told you that one of the best ways to sharpen an image is to blur it? Here's how. Let's say that I have this great photograph here of this woodworker, but you'll notice that in photography circles, it is what we call a little bit soft. And what I mean by that is that the edges on some spots are just a little bit out of focus. It's just a little bit soft. Her face is in pretty good shape, but parts of it here just are a little bit blurry, almost as if the camera moved a little bit, or maybe the equipment or she moved a little bit when the photograph was being taken. And one of the best ways to resolve this is actually to blur it. And so here's how it works. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your background layer as it is there, and you are going to duplicate it twice. You're going to do Command J, so that way you have a layer 1 and a layer 1 copy. Rename layer 1 to normal and layer 1 copy to vivid. This way we can have something that we can refer back to and talk about consistently. So your bottom layer is normal, your top layer is vivid, and then what we want to do is we want to invert the vivid layer. And the easiest way to do that is Command I or Control I on a PC. Command I is going to do this effect that you see all the time in amateur videos. Political ads use this a lot, where it makes things look inverted and sort of weird and evil looking. But now that we have it inverted, we can now change the blend mode on this to vivid light. And when we change it to vivid light, it's going to become mostly gray. And this is going to be to our advantage, as you will see here in just a second. Next thing we want to do is we want to take this vivid layer and we want to go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. It's going to give you this message that you have to, re-enable this, blah, blah, blah. Just hit OK. And then from here, now that we have a smart filter, we can come back and adjust this later. You can go into Filter and then go to Blur, Gaussian Blur. And you can tweak these levels and see what sort of things will happen there. You can go all the way to the maximum. I don't recommend it, but you can do this. And you'll notice that it's still a little blurry, but we're not done yet. We actually want this to be relatively mild. Ordinarily, I would recommend that you use something in the neighborhood of probably about 2 to 3 pixels on most any average image. For our demonstration purposes here, we're going to dial this up to about 3.5. And so we get something that looks just like this. And from here, we're going to hit OK. And now that we've got the smart filter, the Gaussian blur applied, we can now group these two layers together. So you're going to select vivid and normal. So you're going to hold the Shift key and click on both, and then Command G or Control G on a PC. It's going to group these two things, and then you can set the blend mode on the entire group. And when you do this, you can scroll through here and find all sorts of neat ones, but overlay is the one that we're after, because overlay as a blend mode will sort of darken some grays and sort of ignore a lot of the whites in an image. And so it increases the contrast, and that's kind of what we were after here, but we wanted to increase the contrast only along the edges of specific elements in the photo, not all contrast across everything. We want to increase the contrast along the edges of, say, hair or arms or the machine or even the individual planks of wood in the background. From here, you can do a couple of different things. You can reduce the opacity on this layer so that way you get a different level of effect. But if I zoom in here, particularly on her hair, this is where we are at sort of maximum opacity here. And if I turn it off, you can see how it gets much softer. If I turn it back on, you can see the contrast there just blows right through the roof. This is a little bit much, but it's a useful way to sort of develop an HDR effect, a sort of a poor man's HDR effect of a sort. You can also go back, since you've got a smart filter on this, you can go back into your layers and double click on the smart filter and go back in and change the amount of the blur. And as you do, you'll see the result, which kind of blows out in sort of a weird way. But perhaps there are useful effects for this. But in this case, I like it at about 3.5. You could go as high as 4 here, maybe. And then you could also opt to change the opacity on the entire group. The entire group actually has the same configurations as individual layers do in that regard. That's it. That's a neat way of looking at the way that you can sharpen images by blurring them. It sounds counterintuitive, but the way that this particular function works, it's a handy trick. Photographers have been using this technique for a long time between the blend modes and the Gaussian blur to actually improve the sharpness of specific images. Now, your assignment for this week is to work on creating some kind of an image that utilizes blurs in an interesting way. And in a lot of circumstances, you can do that by using blurs for effect to add focus, take away focus, increase or change contrast or sharpness. There are a lot of different blur techniques that are in the filter menu. I encourage you to check those out. And I also want to encourage you to pursue Googling around for different options and things that you can do with those different blur functions. If you have any questions, reach out and good luck.